David, thank you for this comment. I agree with so much of what you were saying here. So I'm actually putting the whole comment right here so everybody can see. For most healthcare providers, there is an understanding that the conversation does not end at are there randomized controlled trials or not. There is a hierarchy of evidence when it comes to what actually supports the information that powers the risk versus benefit profile. And I think maybe that's where you sometimes see this like tunnel vision focus on the randomized controlled trial as the gold standard. But really, I think that sentence where you say whether informed adults can evaluate that risk transparently, I think that is the essence of where there is a lot of push and pull and a lot of disagreement between different populations that are involved in this conversation. Informed in and of itself is loaded. Because what does informed mean to me versus what does informed mean to you versus what does informed mean to the FDA? Like different stakeholders or groups of people have different ideas of what informed looks like. And for healthcare providers, our gold standard of information, like the content that fuels a patient's being informed, comes from a certain place and comes from a certain type of information, whereas that might not necessarily be the scale that the general public is using or, certain groups of people are using. And then the phrase evaluating that risk transparently, that also includes the same tension because you are using some source of information to evaluate that risk. What is the source of information? And again, we might have varying ideas about what the source of that information is, what the quality of that information is, and how the type of studies or the types of research that may or may not have been done contributes to the ability to actually be well informed. And I'm not going to get too deep into the regulatory bodies and whatnot, but what I will say is that one of the reasons why the regulatory system and regulatory bodies are so important, at least to me as a healthcare provider, is because all of those processes exist inside of that system. Now, are they perfect inside that system? No. Nobody's pretending that they're perfect, but they do already exist. Adverse event reporting, sterile handling practices. So from my point of view, there is a place and an important place for those regulatory bodies to be involved, because why would we be recreating wheels? You know what I'm saying? Like, the last thing I'll say here is, I know there's this growing narrative that healthcare providers are money hungry and blah, blah, blah. That it really pains me to hear that kind of stuff, because to dedicate as much about our lives, and really I'm not even talking about me, I'm talking about people who like provide patient care on a daily basis and have really dedicated their lives to doing this day in and day out. Their priority is your well-being. And because we know just how many entities are out there just waiting to capitalize on vulnerable or in need people, I worry a lot about the types of predatory behavior that goes on in the wellness industry. Say what you want about pharma. I've heard all the complaints. I'm a pharmacist. I hear it all the time. The wellness industry is frightening to me as a healthcare provider. And I think that people don't necessarily see all the big bad wolves that are there, because the wellness industry is able to fly under the radar in a lot of ways. It leaves people vulnerable to all types of tactics and messages and narratives and beliefs and claims that are frankly unfounded and unreliable. All that to say, when you go back to that line about informed adults being able to evaluate the risk transparently, the regulatory system and the guardrails that we currently have are protective in a lot of ways. And once we start operating outside of that system for things as high risk as medicines, then the influence of people and entities who do not have the public's best interest at heart starts to become a lot stronger. That's my fear, and I believe that is probably the fear of a lot of clinicians out there.